So let's talk a little bit about what supplies are needed. You need seeds. You'll need a spray bottle with water. You need bright light. So you're going to need 10 plus hours of light. And if you say, well, I have got the counter space, but I don't have a window near the counter space, you can also use a grow light. A lot of grow lights now are pretty inexpensive. You could get them, for $20 or under. And a lot of them have timers. So you can get that 10 hours of light through your microgreens using a grow light if you don't have a natural light source to grow your microgreens in. You'll need scissors. That's what you're going to use to harvest your greens. Any old scissors can do. It doesn't matter. I would just say whatever scissors you use, just make sure they're nice and sterilized because again, you want to make sure it's food safe. And you're going to need a dome or a cover. You have two different methods that you can grow microgreens in, and we're going to talk about both. If you choose to grow in a tray or a container, you're going to need the tray itself to grow in. And I'm going to give you a number of different options of trays that you can choose to grow from. And you're going to need a sterile growing medium. So I mentioned we don't use soil. We need something sterile that doesn't have fertilizers or anything in it that will help the plant grow. It just needs sterile so that the seed can just, absorb the water and grow from there. And we'll talk about a couple different options for a sterile growing medium. If you're choosing to grow hydroponic, and by hydroponic, what I mean is that you're using a vessel that holds water and a mesh screen. So here's an example right here. This is a vessel that holds water, and this mesh screen, the holes are super, super, super small. So it'll allow water to evenly come up to the seeds. So the seeds are in regular contact with the water, but the seeds won't fall through. So if you're doing hydroponic, you'll need to have a container and that has a screen. And I also suggest using hydrogen peroxide, which I have pictured right here. I just do kind of a couple little squirts into my hydroponic container about this size. So a little bit more if you're using a bigger container. That's just going to help keep the water fresh. Now, there are certainly times that I've forgotten that and they've grown certainly fine, but I like to do it as just a kind of insurance policy. So these are all the supplies that you will need if you're thinking about growing microgreens at home. So seeds are going to be the most important. You want to know what type of plant you want to grow, and you want to get high quality seeds. So let's talk a little bit about that. You want to get garden seeds. So you're not going to be buying things that are, for commercial growing. So you could go to your local garden center. You do want to make sure to get organic seeds. Those are going to be untreated seeds, and they're going to be a little bit higher quality. So for sure, if you're looking for a basil, you could go to your garden center. There's also a lot of online suppliers of seeds too. So just make sure that they're of a good quality. And usually on the back of them, there's like an expiration date or a package or harvest date. You want to make sure that packaging date or that harvest date wasn't many, many years ago. Most seeds are going to last for about 5 years. So make sure your seeds have been harvested recently because with each passing year, even those seeds that are stored properly, the germination rates will go down. So make sure if you're paying for the seeds that they're, look for that packaging or harvest date to make sure that you're getting new seeds and that they're organic. Use a reputable supplier, so if you're buying at a garden center or known seed companies, seed catalogs, those are considered reputable suppliers. So, you go down to your local nursery, they're going to be selling you seeds of good quality. I also say start small. Once you start finding what microgreens you like to grow, you can buy in bulk, and that will reduce the cost, certainly. But when I first started growing microgreens, I just bought the little seed packets. You need about 1 teaspoon for kind of most of the small containers that you'll be growing microgreens in. So you don't need a lot. So it's fun to kind of try a lot of different ones to see which you like growing before you buy bulk. So I always say start small, buy a little packet that looks like this. And then once you know, okay, I really like my favorites, I really like growing broccoli. And there's a greens mix that has like, broccoli and some field greens in it. I just buy those in bulk. So it's a little bit cheaper. So I mentioned there's two different types of growing methods, and it's for you to decide. Sometimes I grow both, hydroponic and in trays. So if you grow in trays, you'll want to make sure that the tray is at least an inch in height and it has proper drainage holes. I love using recycled berry containers. When I did my talk out at the library a couple of weeks ago, I collected a bunch of old berry containers and I passed them out to folks. They're really great because they're the right height. They fit a lot of the sterile growing pads, and they have drainage holes already in it and a lid at top. So super, super great to use, and one less thing to buy, right? These seed trays come in different sizes. If you use them, I suggest making sure that they have holes. Not all of them come in holes. So if you buy flat trays like this, what I would suggest doing is poking holes in them to allow drainage and then doubling them up. And I'll talk about bottom watering. So this will really help when you bottom water the tray. You could let it soak in there and then dump the extra water and then allow any excess water to drain out, which you could then dump. So drainage holes is super important for the bottom watering, which we'll talk about, as well as to make sure it doesn't get too wet, which could prevent your seeds from growing. Hydroponic is the other option. So again, this is an option where it's a lot easier, quite honestly. And I find that it grows a little bit, hardier. Really, once you fill up the tray and with the water and sprinkle the seeds on it, you just let it grow, because the water is filled up to the mesh screen. So the seeds are perfectly watered. You don't have to water it. And then as the roots grow down into the container, the plant's growing up. So the roots, as the water, level is going down, 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 the roots are reaching down to it. So let me zoom in there a little bit so you could see this. So this is the seed. You can see the seeds on the bottom and the microgreens that are growing. So these are full-size microgreens that I've started to harvest. And you could see that the roots have grown all the way down to reach the water. And it's really interesting, even when I've peeked under the screen, even right after the seeds just germinated, the roots are already growing down there into the water. So it really is self-watering, which is really nice, super convenient. So selecting a growing tray is an option, and we'll talk a little bit about what kind of trays to grow. You want to make sure that it's flat and shallow. So you don't want something that's bumpy and ridgy, because your seeds might all fall and pool to one side. That'll keep the seeds nice and stable on one same level. You want to make sure for sure there's drainage holes, because you're going to be bottom watering them, and you want to make sure that any excess water drains out. You want to avoid portioned off containers. So see a container like this. These are really great if you're starting like something from seed that you're going to grow to a big plant. But when you're growing microgreens, you don't need something like that. In fact, you don't want it, because you're going to be scattering a lot of trays in a small area that's almost going to be growing, closely, very densely populated. So it looks very lush like this. You're not growing one single plant at a time. You're growing many, many, many on one tray. So avoid portioned off containers. Hydroponic. If you're using hydroponic, it's going to be growing water below the screen. So you don't need to worry about any type of growing medium for the hydroponic. If you are growing in a tray, you will need to determine what kind of growing medium you're going to use. And I'll tell you about a couple different types. The ideal, what you do not want to use, soil from your garden. You want it to be sterile. So what does that mean? You don't want it to have any fertilizer or compost or anything that you would typically want to help a plant grow and flower and fruit. You want something that's just going to maintain equal, moisture, because that water, what the seed needs to grow is water. And then once it germinates, it needs the light, and then water throughout its life cycle. So really finding a sterile medium is ideal. Coconut coir, and I'll show you a picture on the next slide, is really ideal. It's really light and fluffy, and it looks like this. Here's a picture of coconut coir. It's really light and fluffy, so you'll smooth it out in your growing container. So it'll be it's nice and even, so your seeds won't fall all over the place. It'll just be right there on top. And it really, really helps maintain moisture. And so once you water it, it'll not only stay longer, but it will, it'll maintain really a nice even moisture for a longer period of time. Again, if you use a potting mix, you can try. I really would discourage using a potting mix. People have used, and I have read articles that say you could use potting mix, but make sure it's one without fertilizer or compost. It's really hard to know what's in potting mix. They will sometimes tell you what's contained. A lot of times it is going to have compost or some type of fertilizer or something that will act as a fertilizer. So for that, those type of things will give your microgreens a really off taste, which you don't want. You want it to have that strong, pungent, taste of a cilantro or basil or broccoli or whatever you're growing. So for that, I would kind of stay away from potting mix, or again, for sure, fertilizer or compost. You could also use sterile growing pads, and I will show you what those look like. They come in a lot of different sizes. So, if you're using a bigger tray or like the smaller berry container, you could find growing pads that fit those nice and snugly, or you could piece them together side by side. You could also use you could use paper towels. The one thing that I will say about paper towels is, yes, you can use them, but they're going to require a lot more maintenance because it's going to dry out. A lot of the growing mediums, like the growing pads that I'm going to share with you, they're used because they, like coconut coir, really retain water moisture really well. So you have to water maybe once a day. Paper towels, you're going to have to water more frequently. So definitely something you could use. It's just going to require a little bit more maintenance. So something to be aware of. So here's some examples of growing mediums. Coconut coir is one that I highly recommend. It will typically come in a block. I included this. This came with a bulb that I had purchased around the holidays. You might have purchased one and noticed this little, it looks like a big coin, and it says add water, and then it puffs up, and it's this fluffy mixture that kind of looks like the color of soil. That's coconut coir. So you might have seen it and not even realized what it is. This block right here is about 1 pound, and it's about 8 inches big by a couple inches high. If that's how coconut coir is sold, so you could throw it in a cabinet to store it. When you're ready to use it, I just put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and I fill it with warm water. I cover it, and then it will puff out, and it makes about 5 pounds of coconut coir. So then I'll just cover with a towel and have it there, in my garage when I need it. So coconut coir is a great alternative. If you want just some type of product like a growing pad that you can store in a drawer and just use when you need it, there's a lot of different options. Recycled wood are really great options. This particular size of recycled wood is what I use for the berry containers. It literally fits it perfectly. And then jute is also another growing medium. Hemp is another growing medium. These are all, really, they're made of recycled material, and they really are known to be able to keep moisture, for a longer period of time, which is why they're selected.